Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. I'm Ethan. This is League Breakdowns. We just had our Swiss Day 1 for the World Championship, and it was a banger of a day. We had a lot of really good matches. All 8 I thought had interesting things coming out of them. So I'm going to here break down in order, starting with Vikings from the top, going against Team Secret Wales. If you caught my video yesterday, I predicted Team Secret Wales to win. And the way that they did it was pretty similar to what I thought they would do. So, Team Secret Wales, won't go into this too much, but they're a very mechanically good team. They actually were the only team domestically to take a game off CFO, so they're very strong players if they are all, showing up on the same day. So, against this team, they had a good showing. They looked great. The only thing was VKS actually had a really good showing with Miru. Miru mid lane, he got an early solo kill in that mid lane. He looked pretty great. So for them, while they didn't get the win, I'm hoping that in that 0-1, or even if they drop into 0-2, that Miru is able to continue with that play. I think that they can get some solid leads out of him and try to generate some mid-game gold leads based off of that mid lane presence. Now, Team Secret Wales, honestly, this entire game kind of came down to the Otacon that happened on the top side of the map. It was a really good vision control that led up to that Otacon. And then Team Secret Wales was able to kind of just completely turn and take that Otacon and blow the game open from that point on. After that point, they really did not give up any control of the map at all. They had some of the best vision leading up to the Baron and then the objectives after that Otacon. The actual stream of the game, the commentators were talking about how dark the side of vision was for Vikings, because they really had, on red side, they had no ability to see anywhere. They didn't even know what was happening when the Baron was taken. So pretty clean win by Team Secret Wales. If I had to say anything, I think their early game could be cleaned up just a little bit. It was a pretty even game, honestly, I'd say, from the standpoint up until that Otacon fight. So if they want to just clean that up a little bit, hopefully, I think that they are a pretty strong team. I've talked about it before. I think they're probably in the top 10. I'd say in that 9-10 spot of this entire tournament. So, if they have a really good showing, it's not out of the region, or out of the realm of possibility that they make it into quarterfinals if they get a good draw, if they show up on the day. So, some great play there by TSW. Next, we can move on to CFO versus Fnatic. It was an unfortunate day for EU for all their games. We'll get into some of those later, but specifically talking about the CFO team, we all know how strong the CFO team has been this year. They've been to every international, the only team to do it so far this season, and they look great today. Driver topside, he was on his Sion pick. He was able to pick up a solo kill on Oscarin and Poby today, one in the top side, one in the mid lane. And then if we really want to look at this game, it was actually a pretty even game state. I don't think Fnatic was super far behind, or the game was out of the question for them until about the 15:30 mark. CFO, they won a Rift Herald fight, and then they were able to take a 3-for-0 fight during that. And at that point, it was kind of over for Fnatic. All the rest of the fights were definitely a step down. They were kind of fighting an uphill battle, and I didn't think they were really going to have a chance to come back after that, unless there was a kind of a monumental mess up by CFO, which we're not going to be expecting that out of the top teams of this tournament, unless you're BLG. Little hint for side later. One thing that I didn't think CFO didn't do amazingly was set up and start with the Otacon. I think that this is the area, especially with Otacon being a new objective in the game this year. It has gotten better throughout the year for most teams. I think they realize that with the debuffs that Otacon puts on your team, it's not as easy as taking a Baron or taking a Dragon. You can't just juggle the Otacon and kind of face up into a 5v5 team fight on even footing. You're going to lose that every single time. So I think for the most part, if I had to say something that CFO didn't do great and could really improve upon, it's going to be making sure that that top tier 1 tower it was on Fnatic's red side, that's got to be gone. It really just boxes you in. You're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with Otacon and then that top tier 1. You're not really able to turn fully onto Fnatic with that tower, kind of threatening you. So I think for them, if they're going to set up that Otacon, I think they need to take that tower first. If that means they delay the Otacon, I think that's something that has to be done. I think that we saw too many times today Otacon fights that went south for a lot of teams, and either blew their lead or lost whatever chance of getting back into that game they had. So for me, I think if they clean up the Otacon fight, clean up the objective control, they're going to be in a good position. Finally, with this game, they cleaned up. They got Baron, and they ended the game fairly quickly after that, getting Chemtech Soul as well. They're a very strong team. This team, I think, is able to make waves at this tournament. I think that they're gonna be somewhere in top 8. I would say if I had to guess, 6 to 8 is right around where their power level is right now. But I definitely think they can take games off of the 5 and 4 seeds. Not really seeding, but power level, right? I think that they can definitely take games off of them. And in a best of 5, they might be able to surprise some players. So. Next, moving on, we got KT MKOI. So KT Rolster, I prefaced it in the last video, they're my favorite team. And in KT fashion, for whatever reason, this team just has a curse that always goes with it, but they're a roller coaster, and this game was no different. It was a very even game. This was kind of expected. Both of these teams, coming out of their regions, they're both, KT's 3 seed, MKOI is the 2 seed, but I'd say their levels are pretty similar, and it definitely looked like that, especially in the early parts of this game. So pretty slow early game. Both the teams were kind of trading objective control back and forth on either side of the map. There was a couple kills back and forth, but it was actually a pretty slow game, which I was a little bit surprised by. Typically, KT, I don't want to say they're a super bloody team, but I mean most of their games they're fighting over things. So I was a little surprised by how slow it was. MKOI definitely was leading the game pace early. I'd say up until about 15 minutes, even 18 minutes. They were the ones making plays around the map, and I think that KT Rolster was mostly kind of responding to those plays and mitigating them as much as they could. And then right around the let me go back to that really quick. MKOI, I mean, they're leading the pace early. Yunara was able to get a couple kills early on the Caitlyn. So I think that they just kind of fell behind a little bit because of that. I'm not saying it specifically because their macro is worse, but I think they were just playing from a slight disadvantage in gold and item breakpoints and XP as well, and so they kind of had to react to those. So moving in, 21 minutes, MKOI is up 3k gold, which is a great lead at 21 minutes, and you feel pretty good if you're an MKOI fan. And they have 3 dragons and a Hextech Drixel spawning at 26 minutes, right? So, I mean, you're at the point where you're leading the map, you got the gold lead, you got the dragon lead, you got a really nice soul that's going to be spawning in about 3 or 4 minutes. You're feeling pretty good about your chances. Unfortunately, at 23 minutes, Otacon is started by MKOI, and as we talked about before, Otacon's a little bit of a bait, I mean, you're winning these fights. There's technically really no reason why you need to start an Otacon unless you're thinking that you need to accelerate the game pace. But I mean, they had a pretty good grasp on this game. I think that at 23 minutes, you just continue to push out those side waves, and then you kind of group back up for that dragon fight. I think that you're in a lead enough that even if the dragon goes KT's way, I think you clean up that fight. Maybe you go 3 for 1, 4 for 2, and then I think from there, then you go on to the Otacon. I'm not a huge fan of the starting Otacon up just kind of willy-nilly without anything leading into it. I think Otacon is a really great objective to go for when there's really no risk of the other team kind of either stealing it or contesting you on it. So after a big team fight, after another objective fight, I think that's the best time to do it. So they start the Otacon at 23 minutes. It turns into a huge loss for MKOI. It kind of looked like it was going their way, but it looked like Cuz was completely out of the fight. It looked like he was gonna die basically for nothing. And then BDD is able to find a 4-man shockwave that completely turns this fight. KT cleans up basically. They kind of chase them down that bot side lane right there, and then they kind of turn back onto the Otacon, try to get their prize. Unfortunately for them, Elyoya is able to kind of sneak in and steal that Otacon, but it's not enough. I mean, yes, the Otacon power is great for them, and the fact that they're able to get it, but that was kind of the turning point of the match, I think. KT, especially Perfect and Cuz, in the following, fights that kind of happened. There was, I think, 2 of them that happened. They were able to just kind of make enough space for their backline to kill the Galio and the J4. Typically, what it looked like was the J4 would, EQ in, Galio would ult on top of him, and the idea is, okay, let's kill this, Caitlyn, who has probably not too much, movement compared to a Yunara with ult, things like that. But they weren't able to get the job done, and then with the Rumble and then Cuz kind of just zoning away, they're able to turn the fight around. So that's kind of what the fights looked like in the later half of the game. didn't really seem like MKOI was able to win any of these fights. And then there was a 4,500 Baron play for KT, so that didn't help. And at that point, I mean, the items are stacked against you, the gold stacked against you. It's just not going to be going great. So last fight took place in the mid lane, and Koi was not able to kill Caitlyn, and they basically lost because of that. Orianna was also still alive at the end of that, so KT was able to come up with a big win. That was a very good showing, I think, for both teams. I think if you're Koi, there's a lot of things in that game, especially the early game, that you feel pretty proud about, and you're not too disappointed. You went up against, you know, probably the least competitive Korean team, but it's still a Korean team, right? I think you feel really good going into 0-1 bracket or 0-2 bracket if you're going to have to be playing against another European, North American, I guess CB, LOL, PSG, teams of that nature. I think you feel pretty good as MKOI going into those matches. Anyways, next one, we had our fourth game of the day. This was BLG versus 100T, which is, I'm just going to say, most people were expecting this to be an ass whooping. This was supposed to be, I think I saw on Reddit, it was multiple things saying this was going to be an ass whooping of biblical proportions, and that's like a direct quote. But it did not end up being that way. So first, this entire game felt really good for 100T, especially in the early game. You know, you're not, in the early game, starts 0-0, you're on even footing, and they looked like they were competing in the early game, and it always feels that way with teams, right? Because, you know, gold's equal, XP's equal, but basically I kept just kind of expecting them to throw a fight to BLG. Like, I expected them to try to set up a Baron and throw it, or a Dragon and throw it, but it never happened. 100T had really good objective contest and control against BLG. I also thought that some of this was, the one thing I really noticed on this was Elk on the Caitlyn kind of had some interesting itemization going on. He went Collector first instead of Yuntal's, and I know that Collector is typically the first item that you go on Caitlyn, but when you're playing into a Sion, a Xin Zhao, and a Rel, it doesn't feel great to build Collector. I think Yuntal's would have been the better option here, especially because I think that in that scenario, you're never going to be able to kill a Sion, a Xin, and a Rel, who are going to be in your face. They're going to be jumping on top of you with that Collector. So just a side note, I think Elk could have had a little bit better. We had some interesting itemizations today in all games for different players, but we'll get back to that. But 23 minutes in, there's a dragon fight where 100T finds a really, really good fight with a Sion splitting the team apart. So Sion's in the back line of BLG, basically zoning away them from their front line. And Quid is able to get a triple kill on this fight and basically run down the rest of the players. It wasn't a full ace, but they were able to basically get kind of a full ace on the team, and basically punish BLG for, you know, starting up a fight that they couldn't you know, take. Next, they kind of went to the Otacon for this. That was kind of the prize, and BLG seemed a little overambitious. I know there's a lot of things, you know, when it happens during a game, but they lose the fight at Dragon. And then 100T goes to secure Otacon as kind of that prize for winning that dragon fight. And it seemed like BLG, Beishuan especially, were thinking that 100T was overextending. And so they were trying to get into this Otacon fight, and they weren't able to. They were zoned off. But then they tried to chase the members of 100T while they were kind of on their getaway, or they're kind of splitting back to the bot side of Red. And they were punished for it. 100T turns on them, completely kind of wipes the floor with them, and I think that's kind of the point of this game where it was, I look and I go, okay, 100T, if you turn off nameplates versus BLG, this should be a win for Red side. They've got the Otacon, they've got a couple dragons, they just had a couple really big team fights where they got some gold on their carries, and, you know, in any other scenario, you go, yep, 100T wins this, or the team without the nameplates wins this, but because it's BLG, you're kind of still sitting there, you're going, I'm not too sure. It's kind of similar to a T1 situation where no matter how far down T1 is, you're always thinking that they can find a way back in the game, but they're not able to. Basically, 100T just kept on getting picks on members of BLG. It was interesting. They kept getting 1 to 2 picks on players, staggering their death timers, and then kind of just capitalizing on this by kind of rotating around the map, getting turrets, getting vision control, and kind of like a self-perpetuating system of, you know, picks into towers, picks into objectives, and they're able to win off that, which is great. So I think this is one of the biggest upsets in Swiss stage history. I'm kind of thinking about it off the top of my head. Can't really remember too much else that even rivals this, especially being the first game. We don't know the full power level of these teams. If BLG goes 0-3, we might look at it and go, okay, yeah, they weren't ever good, right? But if BLG goes 3-1, gets out, we might look at this and go, wow, that was a really big upset. So personally, I think it's still a pretty big upset. 100T was definitely not the strongest team coming into this tournament. I think they're bottom. I think most people would put them in the bottom 4 of this entire tournament. So a really great showing from them. Even if this is the only win they get in the entire event, I think that they should be happy with how they showed up today, how they played, how they secured all these wins and these fights, and then they closed it out cleanly. So great win to 100T. Next, we go into the FlyQuest T1 series. I think for most Western fans, this was a series that they were a little sad about the drawing, but I think that they thought that this might be a possible win for FlyQuest. Unfortunately, it really did not look that great for FlyQuest. First Dragon fight went T1's way. No kills, but there was a large amount of sums that were given over on the FlyQuest side. They basically had to use all their flashes to get out and not die. And basically T1 takes that, goes up to Grubs, takes 3 Grubs because they know that FlyQuest isn't going to be able to even contest it with all those sums down. So pretty early on, tempo is definitely in T1's favor. I felt that when I was watching this, especially with Inspired, FlyQuest just were not on the same page. It seemed like multiple times, Inspired found himself in the wrong spot, and I don't know if that's Inspired's problem, if he is just kind of overextending, he's not on the same page with his team, or if the team's not on the same page with him. But whatever the reason, it made him look like he was inting a little bit. Definitely felt like he was being caught out a lot this game. In the mid game, I actually was pretty happy with FlyQuest, even though they were down by about 3K or 4K. They made a bunch of attempts to kind of have equal fights, and I thought that they were basically coming out even from some of these fights, which is pretty impressive with that gold lead in T1's favor. But they definitely did feel a step behind in the macro sense. A lot of the objective control, turrets kind of going on around the map, plays happening. They definitely felt like they were reacting to it, which, I mean, when you're down 5K, that's kind of going to be the case. So, I thought Bwipo played a pretty good game of Mordekaiser. The only time I felt that T1 might lose control of this game was that mid-game fight where Bwipo was able to get 2 kills on the back line, but they kind of shut that down pretty quickly, and were able to get Baron control with the Talia wall, basically block them out and not allow them to kind of turn a fight at all. So they got the Baron, and they basically turned, won the fight, ended the game. So T1 definitely looking very strong. It's kind of what we expected out of this team. There's a lot of question marks on what their form would be like going into this tournament, especially coming in as the 4 seed. They're able to dispatch of IG pretty easily, which I think most people expected, and now they dispatch of FlyQuest decently easy as well. So we'll see what T1 can do the rest of the tournament. I think, for me personally, I have them as a top 2 team at this tournament. I think that they are right behind Gen G. And so I'm expecting them to kind of either go 3-0 or 3-1 out of Swiss stage. The 6th game of the day was Hanwha Life versus AL. This is the game I was most excited for in terms of actual gameplay when we saw the seeding yesterday, and it did not disappoint. I think this was the most even game of the day. It was very back and forth. It was kind of a 40-minute slugfest between the 2 teams. I think there was 3 Barons throughout this entire match, which is kind of a crazy stat, but Flandre, Flandre is an interesting top laner. He's been in the league for so long in the LPL, and he used to be a little bit of a carry, but I think that he's kind of morphed into this very role-playing player, which I think actually suits AL very, very well. And he was sacrificing a lot for his team, and basically was doing that in order to make sure that they had numbers and tempo advantage around the map, even if that meant that he was giving up CS, giving up XP. So, the first grubs, those were taken by AL because Flandre basically, roamed up, scared HLE off of that, fight because their Cassante was down bot side, not able to come up, didn't have TP up. So HLE kind of gave over those grubs, and then a 17-minute dragon fight. AL actually secured the dragon but gave a quadra kill over the Viper's Kaisa, which that's not what you want to do. Viper is one of those players in the world that if you give him a lead, he will hold on to that. And so when they gave that over, I was very, very worried for AL. And even then, I think Viper played a great game today. Watching his mechanical play in these fights was really a treat. I'm an ADC player, so I love watching ADCs play to the highest extent. And he was doing everything he could to win this game. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him. But, you know, it is what it is. So after that fight, the Quadra kill, they basically ballooned. HLE took that lead, ballooned it to 3K, and then went into an Otacon. Tale as old as time, at least this year, Otacon fights. So HLE starts the Otacon. They turn when it's at 6K health, and they try to basically fight a split Anyone's Legend. Unfortunately for them, Anyone's Legend is able to win both sides of that team fight. I think that the debuffs from the Otacon were probably the breaking point of this fight. I think that if HLE go into this fight with that gold lead that they have, and you know there's no Otacon debuffs on them, I think they win. So this is one of those times where I look at it and I go, probably need to check a couple more boxes before you start with that Otacon. Maybe you need a pick. Maybe you need, you know, something else going on. Another previous fight where you have 2 people down. But I think starting it up 5v5 was a mistake for them. I think this is kind of where they lost control of the game, and it became more of a coin flip again. So basically, AL wins that fight. They go down. They get the Otacon, and then they go for Soul Point. HLE is able to pick up the Dragon, which is very, very lucky for them. They're basically able to delay that Soul, but they lose two members doing that. So HLE goes to Baron, they secure the Baron, and then they take a pretty even team fight, 3-for-3 after the fact. You know, and in between these two things, not too much happens, but they skip forward. Next fight is basically for the next Baron. So with that Baron, they were able to pick a couple towers, kind of move around the map, get a couple things off the board, but they're kind of posturing for the next Baron, and AL is able to take this very cleanly, 3-for-0. They get the Baron. They're also able to get the Dragon. This was with the Neeko support able to steal away from Viper. Viper basically tried to run straight to the Dragon to delay that Soul Point, and the Neeko came in, ults, knocks him up. He's not able to auto attack or use any of his abilities, and Neeko hits it with the Q and steals away the Dragon. So AL basically takes the lead from this. They get another fight. They completely demolish HLE. They break into the base. Elder spawns, and I think HLE at this point goes, that's our only chance of winning. So they try to fight at the Elder Dragon, and AL completely wins the fight against them, and basically doesn't even secure the Elder, just basically runs to the base and wins the game. So great game out of both these teams. I don't think this is the worst loss in the world for HLE. I think AL is one of the stronger teams from China and one of the stronger teams in the tournament. I'm expecting them to go pretty far, hopefully make semifinals if everything goes well. So I think if you're HLE, this is a good match, especially because it wasn't a complete stomp, right? It was kind of back and forth. I think you look at this, you look at that Otacon fight, and if you play that a little bit differently, you set it up a little bit differently, I think that this game is much different. So I'm not worried too much about that game for them, but hopefully they can have a good showing tomorrow. Top Esports versus G2. This is the 7th match, or second to last match. Top Esports, they got off to a really early start by basically targeting Broken Blade in the bot lane. So we had the lane swap. It's like the ADC lane swap. So we had Hansama going to the top lane to basically get that solo XP in the top side. And then basically Broken Blade and Lebrov were in the bot side against kind of the same, the ADC and the support from Top Esports. Top Esports basically just bullied Broken Blade in this lane. They dove multiple times. They zoned him off waves. Basically made it impossible for him to really do anything in this lane for the first couple of minutes. So they were able to get basically a kill on BB early. They were able to pick up a Dragon as a reward, and then they basically went straight from that Dragon straight back down to killing him under the tower. I think that BB could have done things a little bit differently. I think about when you lane swap your ADC topside, you're doing so for the net benefit of giving them an easier lane and an easier way to basically get levels and kind of scale faster. So for me personally, I look at Sion is a very good champion who doesn't really need the most amount of gold. He scales off of obviously the minions dying around him, as well as just his levels. So I think that for him specifically, I think that BB needed to play this a little bit safer, and now that's easier said than done. But I think that if you look at the top side with the Aatrox on 369, he was also in a matchup that was not, ideal. He got dove 2v1, survived it topside, and was basically willing to give up and, sack some of his waves to make sure that he didn't give over a 300, gold sack to, the ADC, to Hans Sama. So I think for BB, he's got to play a little bit safer. Even that means giving a little bit more XP, a little bit more gold over, kind of being similar to that enemy top laner. And it was actually interesting. After that second death, I looked at the CS differences between the top laners, and I think it was only like 6 or 7. So even with 2 deaths and having to run all the way back from Fountain into lane, and then back to Fountain into lane, BB definitely wasn't that far behind in CS compared to the Aatrox on the other side of the map, which in my opinion goes to show how safe that Aatrox is playing and willing to give over, XP and waves. So after this, besides those early game deaths, G2 lost a really big fight around Rift Herald and gave over 3 kills. That Rift basically secured Top Esports moving down to the Otacon, and they were able to get the Otacon, good control. And at this point, the game was kind of over. This Otacon fight was basically Aatrox versus 4 members of G2, and they weren't able to kill him. And because of that, basically it was as soon as the other members had peeled off the Otacon that they just killed and they showed up to the fight, it was kind of, shooting fish in a barrel. So G2 couldn't cut through the Aatrox fast enough. Fight goes not well for G2, and Top Esports, they basically secure Baron off this and basically just push into the base and kind of just destroy G2's base. So that was the end of that game. And then lastly, we got Gen G versus PSG. This was also another game that was said or predicted to be a biblical ass whooping, as that Reddit commenter said. And I would say the very beginning did not start out in that sense. PSG actually showed a little bit of life. Topside kill. Keen was able to, or not Keen. Basically, PSG was able to actually kill Keen. Kind of get a kill on him, which was interesting, and then Karthus was able to get a couple kills on the Vi in that bot side river. Unfortunately for them, Gen G kind of shook off that early tournament nerves and just kind of started winning their fights. They made a lot of really good cross-map plays. They denied, I think it was 3 to 4 waves of XP and gold to the Sivir, Betty, who was playing Sivir, on the top side. And they only had to give up a kill mid lane for that. I think if Chovy plays a little bit safer, I think that they kind of just win that entire, event completely, even more so. But Chovy goes down, but I still think at the end of the day it was a massive win for Gen G. That Sivir was severely diminished because I think that those 4, that's 2 minutes of waves, right? 4 waves, 2 minutes, basically behind 2 minutes for all of her breakpoint items and XP. So I think that made a lot of the next fights easier. So Gen G then takes the Rift Herald and kind of gets out cleanly. Nothing happens from there. Gen G starts up Otacon, and they actually lose it. Karsa comes in on J4, makes a EQ Smite Steal, which, a lot of heroics there. But basically the entire rest of the fight goes Gen G's way. They get an ace on the end of it. So I actually expected a little bit better of a... I expected a little bit better from Gen G around their objective control. I think it's hard with J4. He can basically engage from a full screen away, so it's always hard to keep him out of the pit or for a Baron, or keep him out of the bot side, top side river if they have an Otacon fight going on. But you would think that they would try to keep it at maybe 2,000 to 3,000 health and then kill him first and then turn onto the Otacon to secure it. But it is what it is. They get the ace, and then basically this fight kind of was the end of the game. Secures them the dragon, puts them on soul point. Game doesn't even get to soul point because PSG basically takes a fight mid lane and Gen G just completely wipes them and pushes and ends the game. So I think that's what we expected. Gen G looked very strong after I think about 10 minutes into that game. I think they kind of turned around. I do think that the Swain pick was very interesting by PSG. And I'm curious if that's something that scrims have shown or if that was kind of just a pocket pick coming out from Maple. But there was aspects of it that I liked. That topside fight against Gen G with the Rift Herald. No one died in that fight, but I actually thought that the Swain looked pretty good. I thought that was going to be completely a clean fight for Gen G, but I think the Swain kind of turned it around for them. So I'm interested to see if that comes back out. In terms of the draw, so after this we had our draw, so all the 1-0 teams were in a pool and then all the 0-1 teams were in a pool. what we got is we have FlyQuest versus VKS. So we got a rematch of our LTA finals. We have KT Rolster versus Team Secret Wales, which I'm also really excited for. KT has gotten some really, really good draws. First drawing MKOI, which, you know, is a strong team, but not the strongest team. I mean, you think about it, G2 would probably be a pretty formidable opponent for KT, but they get MKOI, and now they draw Team Secret Wales, who I think is mechanically good, but I don't think they're as good as CFO. So I'm expecting KT Rolster to come out on top there. And then first going back up, I think FlyQuest should be favorites against VKS. They beat them 3-1 in the LTA Championship, and they beat them 3-0 in the matchup before that. So unless something, you know, kind of wonky goes on, I think FlyQuest is going to win. I think KT is going to win. Next match, MKOI versus G2. I think based off historical precedent, you got to say G2. Though I could see something happening in the best of one format with Elyoya. I think that's a little bit up to debate. We got Top Esports versus 100 Thieves. I unfortunately think for 100 Thieves that today, not that it was a fluke, they played great. They didn't look like they fluked their way into winning that game, but I think that Top Esports is a very, very strong team that people are doubting because of the historical, let's say, lack of success that they've had at international appearances. And I think if you just look with your eyes and you look with, you know, just looking at their stats, Top Esports is a very, very strong team. I'm expecting them to come out pretty strongly and beat 100T pretty handily in this game. Next, we have T1 versus CFO. I think you have to favor T1 here, but I could definitely see an angle. I think this is more of a 60-40, where, you know, T1 should be favored, but CFO could definitely rock the boat and win this match if they show up and something happens, or, you know, they fight well enough, or T1 makes a couple mistakes. Anyone's Legends Gen G. This is probably, if I had to guess, this is a potential World Finals match. This is a potential Championship Series match. It's a best of one. I still think Gen G has the edge, honestly, over anyone else in this tournament. They haven't shown us anything that makes me doubt them for that. So I'm going to go with Gen G. BLG Fnatic. I think BLG, I'm actually going to be surprised if Beishwan starts tomorrow. I think Shadow's going to be coming in. I think they're going to see what they can do with a different jungler. Unfortunately for Fnatic, I don't think that BLG is going to play the same way they did today against 100 Thieves against them. I think that they're going to try to, you know, maybe get a little bit different of a draft angle. I think they're going to maybe change what they do around the map a little bit. So I'm going to predict BLG. And then for PSG Hanwha Life, I think that this is a rough game for PSG. I think that Hanwha Life is a very strong team. They played against a very strong AL, and PSG, besides that first 5-10 minutes, didn't really look competitive at all against Gen G. So I think Hanwha Life will come cleanly out of this series. So that's my predictions for tomorrow, as well as kind of the overall look out for the entire day that happened just today. If you guys have any questions, comments, or anything like that, please leave them down below. And yeah, hopefully, at least for the West, hopefully we have a good day tomorrow. And we'll see you on the other side. Peace.